Hi everyone. Today I'm gonna be talking about this powerful API called Context API, and I would like to explain a little bit about Context API. Basically, is one of the things or one of the package you use to manage state in React. I mean, we know the likes of Redux, we know the likes of use states, we know the likes of content did mount, content did unmount, content did subscribe or not subscribe. All those parts, all those things, all those packages you use to manage state in your development, in your application. I'm going to be talking more about context API and how you can configure it in your application, how you can put it to work, how you can help you manage state, how you can have your functions in it that will help that you will trigger that whenever you declare the function in the context API component, you pull the each functions you want to use based on how you want to use them. You pull them into other components in your application to use. Where you have an application, you have a state in your application, and you want to sort of make available a particular function or a particular state or a particular variable, you want to make available in other part of your component or other part of your application, but you don't have a way to do it other than to prop drill. What prop drill means is, take for instance, you declare this state in your parent component, and the child component needs this state. Now, normal conventional way of doing it is to pass it through the parent to the child. Now, what if you have 10 children and the last children happens to need this state and you have it declared in your paying the parent. Now the parent have to pass it 10 children down the line to get to the last child. It can be very tasking, it can be very tedious to do. So one way to do that is to use context API. Also, you can use Redux. Redux is when you use a dispatcher to dispatch the action, the payload, the action to the Redux store, and there's also some other things going on under the hood. But we're not gonna be talking about Redux today. We are focusing on context API. It's almost similar to Redux, but it's just they have different configuration. So now we're gonna be using something called useContext to pull this data into other components in our application. We're going to be using also, basically, we're going to be using also use state at some point in the application. We're going to be using also local storage. That way, when you have your data being populated in your array, and when you refresh this page, you don't have to lose all those files. Those files will be saved in your local storage. So when you refresh again, on coming back to the page, you'll see have your data right there for you. So let's get to it. So this is a simple application on the right. It's just a to-do list. It's one way I can easily show you how Context API can be put to use. So where we have this blank space, we're going to have our data listed there, the things we want to do. Take for instance, maybe you have a couple of things you want to do in a day. So you will have everything listed here, and you have functions, buttons on this particular application that you can use to either edit, either delete, either clear, either add more to task, and or either clear the whole array list. So first and foremost, I already have this front end UI developed. I mean, I'm not going to go into that right now, and they are all developed into components. That is the best thing React has given to us, how to rearrange our source code in a way that we know what we're looking for. We go right there. We don't have to look through the source codes to find just one little element you want to update. Once you update it in its component, it reflects in other parts that's being used. React gives you that powerful opportunity to reuse your components. You reuse whatever you want. Take for instance, you have a button at the initial you have a button at the front page of your application, and you want to use that same button also again somewhere in your application. You don't have to rewrite all the code. All you need to do is just to import that component and put it to use. So right now, This application is very bare. Nothing is going on right now, and I'm going to test it to you. So if you have something typed here now, it's not going to be responsive. Nothing is responsive. The buttons are not doing anything. It's just normal button. My normal material UI button is doing nothing. So also I use style components in this project. I didn't use normal CSS. I use tiled components. So the things that I use to build this application is number one, the React platform. The number two, I use tiled components. The number three, I'm going to be storing my data in the local storage when you refresh, so that you make persistence in your data. Number four, which is the powerful one we're going to talk about today, context API. So let's go to the app.js. This is the app.js, and this is my styled component. All this is styled component. So powerful, so easy. You have your styles on the same page. You have your JS file. So on this page, I only have a functional component, not arrow function, just normal function. So I have container. This is a div actually. So which you see here. This is a container here. So I'm not going to go into start component today. So I'm just going to go right into what the task for today is, which is context API. So this container has the header, it has the input field, it has the second header, and it has task list, which is where we're going to display all our tasks. And we have the clear button, which is the last button here. So let's go to where we have our task. This is the folder for context API. Now, how did I get this boilerplate and set up all these things? It's very simple. So basically, you will to use context API in your program, in your application, create a folder on the same level on the same level with your component folder, but inside of your source folder. So create a context folder, and inside the context folder, create a JavaScript file, which you would name task list, because we're dealing with task list today, right? So let me task list context.js. That way we'll be able to know, okay, what file it is, what is being held within the file. The first thing to do is to import your React. These are the components you're going to be using, right? So we're going to be using React. So we imported React, use state, which is from React also. Create context. Create context is what will help you create your context. So when that context is being created, you will now use context to pull that context from wherever it's being created into other components, which component you want to use it in your application. So how to do that is basically you call that function, that create context, you call it and save it in a variable name. And we call the variable name task list context. So when you create it in that variable name, then you export it by default, right? So you now create a function with the name task list context provider. Okay, the reason why we're doing this is because we want to wrap our application around this context API, right? So for this to be available in all around our application, we need to wrap our main application with this context API. So that way we are able to get data from this context API from any part of our component in our application. So now when we call the function, we declare the function here, we pass in a prop. I'm going to explain to you where this prop came from. So we pass in a prop. Let's take away the prop for now. So we pass in, okay, let's take the prop away now. So when we declare the function, we declare an initial state for our context API. We declare an initial state. What initial state do we want to have in our application? So we made this hard coded. The reason why I made this hard coded is because of the functionalities we're going to be creating. I want to show you how these things are going to be working. You understand? So we can have data on ground on our page. We can maneuver this data, update this data, delete this data, edit this data and all that. So, and you use state for that. Use state to create this initial state. So, and this set state is used to update this task array. So now when you return, this is what we're going to return. So we create this function, which is the provider context API context provider. So we will now return this we return this value. So the value we are returning is the prop of children. So now we're passing the prop here. There must be a prop that is coming into this context API. So this prop with the structure, what we need from that prop is the children. So we get the children from here, and now the value we are passing in is a task value. So it takes in a value, it takes in the task array, but we have to destructure that task array so that we can have access to it. So whatever we pass here, we are able to use it when we export this component and use it and reuse it in the other part of our other part of the application. So having said that, we go. This is how to set up this page. So once this page is set up, you save and you move on to the next one, which is let's go to where we update our states, get in our inputs, take the inputs, use it to do something, and that will be found in input field, which is here. I wrote all these things before this video was recorded. So, I mean, it's just basic React and style components. So I'm not going to go into that right now. So now, this is our input field, which is here, this one. And it takes in a value of inputs. We already set the state here. And the type is text. The type of the input is text. And there's a placeholder. So that is it. So what we need to do now is, when there's a change in these inputs, we want to do something. We will now say on change. So when there's a change, what do we want to happen? So we create a function. We'll call the function undo change. And when we create that function undo change, we'll copy the function and we'll declare the function here. Const undo change. And we can make it an arrow function. Okay. Sorry guys, I don't know why this equals. So what do we want to happen here? Like I always say to people, whenever you're doing something like this, always console log to know the state, which state you are in your program. So I'm going to console log here. And what do we want to console? Let's just say console log is simple text called clicked. So when we click that, when there's a change rather, and there's a change in my inputs, I want to say that I want to see the word clicked. So when I do this and I go to my inspect, so when I inspect this and I go to console, so when I click something now, I should be able to see. When I start clicking, making this, there's a change now on change. There's a change in my input, and I'm seeing clicked, click, click. So that means that is working. So the next thing we want to do now is to do something. So we're going to pass in an event. We're going to pass in an event, and we're going to say on change. There's going to be, okay, let's console log the event that was that is being triggered. So we're going to say event.target.value. So when we do that, we should be able to see something in the console. So when I do this, when I say W, I should be able to see W printed in the console, which is what we get. And when I say Q, I should be able to see Q. And when I type maybe P, I should be able to see P. So which is working perfectly well. So now we're getting back a value, right? So what we need to do with that value is we need to save that value in our input state, because our input state has nothing right now. So we're going to call this method called set input. I'm going to set the input to that. So when we save that, that is what happens. So on every change that is recorded, set my input to what that change, to what that changes in my input. So I haven't done that. I've already put that input here. So now on change, we grab the change that happened. We now put it in our input to populate our value of our input tag here. So when I type now, we're going to see something here. Before we're not seeing anything here, right? So instead of we seeing it in the console, we grab it from the console, or we grab it from the event that was done, that happened, we save it in a state. We now put it, we now equate that value to our value of our input. That's why we are having it here. So which is good. That is perfect. Our input is working perfectly well. So now we're getting back a value, right? So what do we want to do with this value, with this input that we're getting? We want to populate, we want to use it to populate this array of list of what we need to do in a day. So, but before that, let's even display something here, because remember we have hard coded data here. So we need to use this hard coded data to populate this place. So we go to our task list and we have task. So what we want to do now, we have title here. So we're going to map through, the task here. But how do we even get a task from here into this component? Very simple. Now I told you that when you have, this is your context API's component. So you have a declared variable here and you want to use this particular data in this part of your application inside of this place. So all you need to do is, first and foremost, you have to import this component into this place. And how to do that is just go to your top level and go to this import, say list task list context from so now this we are on this level and we are going to this level. So we have to come out of that of that level first, go to our component and go to our context, and go to the file. Now we have the file here. So also we need one more thing, which is use context. So this is what we use to pull this context into this component. So we declared that here. We declare that under the inside of the function before the return statement. So we say const and we destructure it. What do we need? We need to get tasks, right? The tasks array. So we use context and we'll pass in this component because we're getting the data from this component. So now it's shouting, so we need to import use context rather from React. So this is done. So what do we need to do with this data that we have right here? So what we need to do with this data is we need to come here and you write a JavaScript GSX code here. So what you're saying is that you take the map, you take the array, which is the tasks array, you map through it, and you return something. So we're going to say tasks dot map. We call a map function on that array. So you take in task, or let's just use small letter, task, and you say return something. So what we are returning here, we are returning a component that we're going to pass in this data into, right? So we are returning this component called task component. This component, well, I already declared the component here. And what it takes in is just to restructure. You'll see what I mean by, instead of me writing everything in just one page, remember React, one powerful thing it gives you is how to make your source code, how to make every element in your application and your page component based. So that is why we are doing this. So to test this out, let's just say here we're passing, let's say we're passing task dot, let's say task, we destructure it now. We say we can even destructure it at this level. We can destructure it at this level. Remember that the task asks ID and title, right? So we can destructure it here. We can destructure here and say ID and title so that we don't have to destructure any further. So here we can say ID to ID and title to title. And remember, when you're mapping through an array, you must have a key. If you don't have a key, you won't be able to, your React is going to be shouting because it needs to know how to identify these children. So this individual child should have a unique ID. So when they don't have a unique ID, it makes it difficult for them, for React to know which children or which child you're referring to. So when we save this, So now it's saying object destructure cannot destructure property task of undefined. Okay, guys. Having gone through this, I realized that I didn't wrap my application around. I didn't wrap it with context API. So I'm trying to access the data from context API in one of the components in the application. So it breaks. And why is that? Why and that and the reason for that is because the app was not wrapped with context API. So I just found out that, and I mean, typically it says yes, they cannot destructure property task of objects as it is undefined, which means that the application does not register these data, doesn't know where it's coming from. It needs to be fed on where it's coming from. It needs that information. So, which was what I was supposed to do in my app.js. So here, I'm going to import task list context provider from, yeah, thank you for, I mean, there's a plugin that is responsible for this suggestion. I think it's what's that plugin called? Hold on, let me check here. I think it's called Tab 9. Tab 9 is suggest, like, you use this API configuration that it masters all your imputed codes, and when it sees a line, it knows it helps you complete it. So you can go check it yourself. Just go here and type here, and you see tab 9. Let me just show you tab 9. So when you install it, it helps you complete your code. So that's it, guys. So let's get that out of the way. Yeah. So now we go on. So now that we have the component to wrap our application with, all we need to do is just type it here and put it here and done. Now we should be good. I just hope that there's a way it can just tell you exactly what it is that you didn't do right. But I mean, if that happens, how would you learn, right? So now that we're good, we can bring back our map. Okay, what's going on here? So we're good now. We're good now. But we're not getting anything back yet. Yeah, the reason is because it's just mapping through task, and the length of task is 4. So we're not passing in any props. So we need to pass in prop. First and foremost, the key. Don't forget that. And we have title, which is task.title. You see tab 9 coming clutch and ID. You see? Yes. So now we have that. You see? Perfect, right? So now that we have this displayed, so remember that when we click this, we imputed something and we need to add it to this array. So when we go to that part again, which is input field, we already called um, set input, right? Set input. So now we need to create the function that will submit that input for us. So we go to our task list component. Then we're going to here declare a function called add task, which is going to take one variable, which is title, and arrow function. And what do we want to do? Okay, now console log that title. Let's see what we're going to get from there first before we do something about it. It's going to take in a variable called title. So take this, we add it to the value we want to export to use in other part of the application. So we go to input field, and here we're going to bring in our context API here now. We're going to say import task list context from okay, so which level are we? Which level are we? We are on inside of component. We have to come out of this, and we go to context. Okay. We have context. We are going to context. So we're supposed to come out of here. Okay. We come out of here. We come out of here. Then we should be seeing something. Why are we not seeing anything? Okay. Okay. I want to get I want to import this, and I'm in this place. So I need to come out of this. I need to come out, then go to context. I'm coming out of this. Okay, I'm coming out of the first one, and I'm coming out again to go to context and go to I don't think I'm doing this right, but let's see. Task list context. Okay, so let's go to task list. How do we import here? Context, task list, context. So let's just grab this one. I don't know why I'm missing that out, but it's okay. Oh, I see. No, I see why. This is it. From. Yeah, perfect. So mind you guys, please, the structure here, so you don't have your bugs. That bug shouting out. So here we're going to say const. What are we bringing? Add task. And we're setting it to what? Use context. And it's we'll pick our component. I'll pass it as a prop here. We pass it as an argument here. So it's going to scream at us because we don't have our use context imported. So now we should be good. Okay, now that we have that, so task function, we're going to call it when this click button, when this our add button here. So we're going to say here on click, no, put it on the parent on click, and we're going to undo submit. We are going to create that function. Let me just duplicate this one and put here undo submit. And we're not going to pass in anything. So what we're going to do is to call the function here. We're calling the function here, and the function is going to take one argument, which is title, and the title will not be title here. It will be task. It will be input rather. That's the title we want. So when we save, remember that we said here that when you get that task, just console log our title. So let's see what we're going to get back. So when we go to console log, we put here and we say swimming. When we click this function, you should console log swimming for us, which we have here, which is good, right? So now what do we want to do with that data? We want to add it to task. Excuse me. So how do we do that? We call set task. Remember that it's an array. So when you're putting in the value into an array, you need to retain the content of the array before you add any property. So we're going to do it this way. We're going to say tasks, and we're going to add in the object. Now the object is what? We're adding title to be title and ID to be ID. ID will now be what? So now we don't have an ID. So we need to find a way to generate a dynamic ID. So that is where this is going to come to play. So we use it to generate the ID. I'm pretty sure that you guys know You guys know about UUID, so we call it here and we invoke the function here. We invoke the function, so that will generate a dynamic ID for us. So when we save, we should be good. So now if we test it, we should be getting something. Let's say swimming now. So when we click it, we should be able to see it down here. So let's see if that works. So now it works. So which is good. So we are populating our array. We are adding more data to our array, which is very good. So now let's do something. Let's say, well, now we can populate our array, which is a very good thing. So now let's do something. Let's work on this function delete button. So we're going to say here const delete equals, let's call it delete task. So we know what that button is for, delete task, and it's going to be an array that will take in one parameter, and the parameter will be an ID. We need to know the ID we are using. We need an ID to be able to know what we are deleting. So let's say we console log here the ID. We console log in the ID. So now we'll take the data, the function rather, we'll pass it down here. We'll save and we'll go to where we want to use it. Where do we want to use it? We want to use it in our task component here. So now we need to import task list context from context. And this is how I know I'm in the right directory. When I just wait for the suggestion and I see it's right, then I know I'm doing the right thing. So now don't forget, guys, destructure this one. So here you come on inside of the function before the return statement and bring in what you want, which is the delete task. So we need a delete task, and we're going to use this powerful tool called useContext. We're going to invoke it, and we're going to pass in this. We're going to pass in this, and we are going to import it also. So now we are good. So let's call this function where we have that delete button, which is here. So we're going to say on click, and we are going to set undo click, undo delete. Sorry guys, delete. So we come here and we declare the function const undo delete, and we'll call this delete task, and we'll pass in the ID. Remember, passing the ID. So we'll save this, and let's do our console to see what we're getting back. So now if I press delete, you see it's giving me back the ID, and I press this delete, it's giving me back the ID. If I even put in another task, let's say dancing, and I submit that task, and I press, you see, dancing, and I press delete, it's going to give me the dynamic ID, you see. So that is working. So now what do we need to do with that ID? What do we need to do with that ID? So go back to the task context, task list context, and say that ID now. So we want to use that ID to find that particular task. And when we get that particular task, we're going to take it out of the list. So this is how we're going to do it. We're going to say, go through task, to tasks, find or filter. Let's use filter array. Let's use filter the array because yeah, we're supposed to filter actually. So we'll do this and we'll say to every task, go through the task, return the task.id that is equal to the ID that we passed in. Return that task. Please return that and save that task in a variable. Let's say deleted, let's call it deleted delete item. So now, no, filtered array. Let's say filtered, let's call it filtered task. That's better. So now we're going to now set our set tasks array to this new array. So what we need to do is we call set method, and we'll pass in this, we'll pass in every value here, Control C. And I think we should be good. Yeah, we should be good. But forget, guys, that it's an array, right? So this is now we're passing in. This is going to be an object. So for you not to mix it up, so set it to be this, and now you're putting something into an array, but just spread it. You can actually put it straight up, but it's always like it's always good to just when you're dealing with an array, when you want to put a whole lot of things into the array, spread it. That way, you're sure you're not mutating anything and you're not altering any array. So let's spread it. This way, we're going to be fine. So now, what do we need to do at this stage? So when I delete now, I should see a new array list. Okay. Um, okay, what does happen? Let's see. No. Sorry, guys. What I did is I'm returning the array that matches the array that we click. No, that is why we have to see. The rest will go away and this one will remain. This is not what we want. We are not looking for the one we click. We are looking for the ones we did not click. So here, we're going to say not. And now we should be good. So when I click this, this should go away, not the rest. If I click this, you see? If I click the last one, which is starting, it should go away, you see? The one I will click is what we want it to go away, so not the other one. So now we're good. I mean, you learned something there. If you actually want to return just that one, that's the trick. All you need to do is just find the one that equates to the ID you're passing. So that is done, guys. So what next do we need to do? Let's work on this clear button. Do we have it worked on already? Okay, we have it worked on already. Let's work on this clear button, So we go to this place and we say clear cons clear list, and we declare it. Now we don't need to pass in anything. We are just setting our array to empty array. So that is all we need to do there. I will say set tasks to empty array. That is all we need to do there. Sorry guys, I made a typo error. So copy this and pass it down. You see you see how good and useful and handy context API is? It just makes life easy for us, right? We don't have to prop drill. All we just need to do is to create a component that stands as our context API, create all our functions inside of it, and export all these functions and use it somewhere else in the application, which is very brilliant, right? Task list context. We're importing that from, we're going to destructure it. So don't worry, guys. Yeah. So we destructure it. Oh, shit. We destructure it and we come here just before the return statement. I would say, what do we want to get from there? We want to be able to access. We want to be able to access our clear list. So we copy this one, we paste it here, and we import our use content, the powerful hook that's been helping us today. Without that hook, I don't think we'll be able to pull out the there should be a hook to use actually. So good job to those behind the context API. It's lovely. I love to use it. It helps me a lot. It saves me from prop drilling and all that. By the time you get a hold of these things, of these functionalities, you will just realize that your coding life becomes easy, if you know what I mean. And clear. We're not passing anything, guys. We're just calling the function and we're invoking the function. That's all. So if I click on this, everything should go away. Pulse, it went away. That means our function is correct. So now what we need to do next is this one, the edit. It's a little bit much work rather, but we're going to go through it. I mean, it's JavaScript, right? It's just to write some logics and all that. First and foremost, we need to find the task we want to edit. So when we find that task, we will now use it to populate our input tag. So when we pick that tag, we pick the title of that tag, and we want it to appear here. So how do we do that? We are going to use something, the ID also. You see how important the ID is? Without the ID, we won't be able to make reference to all this data, all the single data, all the single tags. So we'll go back to our context.js, and we'll write here, we say find. We are going to find first. So we are saying const find item, or let's say find single task, and we'll say a function. So what do we want to find? We are finding using this ID, right? We need the ID, and we'll say map through the, iterate through the tasks array, and find, we are finding, right? We are finding one array. So we're going to say task and this. So find the task that ID is equals to the ID that we're passing, and save that task, save it somewhere, and we'll call it const item to edit. Let's call it item to edit, and we have it here. So now we have the item to edit. Now we need to put it somewhere so that we can use it. So let's create a state here and call it const item to edit and set item to edit. And this one should be an array of a single object. The reason why I said that is because we want to use the ID also of that particular um task that we got to replace. We want to replace it. We don't want to create a new to-do list. We want to replace that particular list, that particular task. So we're going to be using, it's going to be an array. So, but let's call it a null object for now. So actually, it's not an array of objects. It's just an object. It's just an object because it's not an array of, it's an object. We're going to pass into that array, you know. So now is null. So here I said task, if the task does this, so return that task. We are returning that task that the ID equals to the ID that we passed in. And we are going to call this set item to be edited. And we'll set it to, oh, okay. We need to say, let's call this one different name. Let's call it editing item. So, or just not to waste too much of code, let's do this. Just copy this. Copy this whole thing here and paste it here. Simple. It's still going to do the same work for us. But now we want to do something. We want to console log it. We want to see what it's going to give us. We want to see what it's going to give us. You see, so I want to save it. So when we save this like this, we are going to pass in this function. We're going to pass it here. And we're going to call that function when we click this word. When we click this, we'll call that function. So when we go to task, and we'll bring it here, we bring it in here, and we go to edit here, and on click, we're going to, let's write a new function here and call it undo edit. And we're going to pass in that function. So, but what is it taking? It's giving us an ID, right? We're taking in an ID. We're taking in an ID also. So we're going to call this function here on click. We're going to call that function there. So now when we click that function, when we click that button, we want to be able to want to console log, we want to see our data, want to console log this data. So when I click it now, we're getting back a data, you see, an object, which is this is the object now we are now going to put here, put it inside of this one. So that's why I say we should use null here, right? It's an object we're getting back. So now this item, we need it somewhere. When we click that button, we need it somewhere. So we are going to go to our input state here. We're going to bring it inside. We're going to bring it in here. So how do we render it? It's very simple, guys. It's very, very simple. All we need to do is to condition our input. You see? So we're going to use something called use effect. So we are going to import that from React Native. So when this page loads, we are going to check if item to edit exists. If there's an item to edit, so put it on that in that tag. If there's no item to edit, then set that tag to empty string. So we're going to say use effect, call a use effect, and pass in a function with a dependency of item to edit. That's the so what do we want it to do here? We want it to, if we're going to say if you exist, then if you exist, sorry guys, if you exist, so set input to that value, guys, watch it, dot title, dot title. Remember, it's an object. Okay, so dot title and health, set input to empty string. That else statement is very useful. The reason why I said it's very useful is this, because of this. So it cannot access image item to edit before initialization. So we are going to call that function. Let's call it here. Let's just change the hierarchy. Let's call it here. And let's see if it's going to give us the same error. So now we're good. It's just where we are calling it. That, you know, when you're dealing with hooks, React carry out every hook based on how you declare them. So if you declare them in the wrong place, you're going to get such error. When you're declaring hook, other persons really matter. So we're good. So now let's check it out. So when we click edit, this generates an item to edit, right? And we should see it here. So when I click this, I'm seeing it there. That means it's correct, right? So now we have it here. So what will we need to do now? If we submit it, it's going to show underneath. We don't want that to happen. So what we want to happen is when we submit it, when we submit this, it should replace where it was before. So how do we need to do that? So that means the function to submit, we need to create another function to commit that will do that for us. So when we go back to this, we're going to create a function called edit task, and we'll set it to, it's going to take two parameters, which is the ID of that particular task you want to edit and the new input. So it's going to take ID and title. So now let's console log the ID and title. Okay, let's console log it. ID and title. Powerful tool. I always love to console log ID and title, console log rather, just to know what I'm actually doing in the particular part of the application. So I can follow my program through I can follow my source code through also. So now we're going to go, where are we using this? We're using this here, input here. So we call it, we bring it in here. So we're going to go to undo submit now here. This is where the logic will happen. So we're going to declare a condition here. We're going to say if there is no item to be edited, if there is no item to be edited, then carry out this. Carry out this. And even here, we're supposed when we okay, add task. Okay, because we already declared add task, where's our set task to this? But now we need to, when we add our task, we need to clear the input. So we say set input, which we should have done before now. Set input to empty array, empty string. Because if we don't do that, okay, listen to this is what I'm trying to say. Let's take all this thing out. So if I had a task here, dancing, and I click add, see, I can still see the dancing here. We don't want this to happen. So that is why we have to do what we just did here. So I click, I said edit task, and I say here, I will say a condition here. I say if item to edit, we have it. No, if we don't have it, only then carry out add task. Only then carry out add task, and also set input to empty string. But if we have it, else, if we have it, then edit task and pass into parameter ID and item to edit dot, oh, sorry. It should be item to edit dot ID dot, we need the ID of that new item of the item to edit. We need the ID and the new input. We need the new. Remember that we already said that item to edit to be our input now, right? So whenever we change it to bring it back to edit task, we want to use that input. That will be our new input to replace the title of that task we are editing. So that's how we're going to configure that. So now we're getting in this and this. So here we say just console log title and ID for us. So if we do this now here, what's going to happen, guys? We're going to get back. See, if I click this, edit, click edit, find. So no, we are not console logging again. So let's take this out. So now we click this, print doc, right? So when I say print information, so what's the terminal? What's the console? See, by getting it. And the reason why it's calling the function, it's calling edit task function now because there's item to edit. Remember that we configured it this way. We said if there's item to edit, if there's no item to edit, only then run this task. But if there's item to edit, run this other function. You see the power of condition. So now that we have it printed, we have the ID and we have the, so what do we want to use this for? So we want to populate our array, remember? So we're going to say task. We're going to say, hold on guys, please. So we're going to say task, the tasks array. We're going to map through the tasks array. And what do we want to do? We're going to map through it and we now check the item, the task that has the same ID with the task we just passed in. The task we just passed in, yeah. So that is the task we need. So we say task.id that is equals return. We want to get back that object. So if task.id equals to the ID that we just passed in, we're going to use ternary operator here. We're going to use ternary operator is, if you can use it for if else statements, it makes it's shorter and it's just straightforward. So if the one on the left, if this is true, return an object for me. Return this object, ID, not title. Let's follow the convention, and ID. Else, return the task. Just return the task. So put this as a new item, new array rather. New new array. So now that we have a new array, we're going to set our tasks to that array, new array. So what this would do, so basically what we are trying to say here is that we have in our edit function, we have two parameters, which is the ID of the edited task and the new input. What do we want to do with these two informations? We say go through our tasks array, map through the tasks array, check each task, the one that the ID matches the ID with just the ID of the item to be edited, the one that matches with that ID of the item edited, return that particular title and the ID of that task. Else, just if there's none, just return the remaining task. Just keep returning the task, you know. So what we're doing is that we are equating, we are checking if there's a task already that has that same ID. We don't want to duplicate IDs. We don't want to duplicate the task to have the same ID. No. So we want to check if if the ID matches, then return the object. And else, if something that is none of that happens, return the other arrays, other tasks in the array. So that is why that's what we are doing here. And now, if you check it, if I edit this one to, let's say, pop a drink, look at what is going to happen when I submit. It's going to change this content. See, pop a drink. That's exactly what we want to achieve. We don't want it to come down here. Now, I haven't done that. The next thing we want to do is that when we click, and we're going to, okay, now we see I pop a drink here, right? So we are going to go back to inputs, and here, afterwards, set inputs to empty string. So when we click this one, and we'll say pop a wine. I know we don't pop a wine, so we don't pop a wine. I get it, so it's just an example. It's just an example to use. So pop a wine, we have it cleared out, right? So, but when I click this, I want this to change to edit task. I want it to update us what we are doing. You get, so all I need to do is to use canary operator again. Go to your input field, go to where we have add task, this part, condition this one, and make it this way. Write a JSX file here and say if item to be edited, if there's an item to be edited, then write edit task. Otherwise, just write edit add task. When you save, now you should be good. So when I click this, it changed to edit task. But now, if I say go see a movie, sorry, my letter G sometimes doesn't work. So if I click this, but now I want to change it back. Once I click it, I want to change it back, right? And the only way is to make this false. So when I click that button, remember that when I click that button, which is here, when I click the button, set input to empty. So when I go back to this place, also here, I'll set, once I set this, when I click this function, set item to edit, set it to null. So if I do that, it will help me change back. It will negate that condition that I gave to this naming. right? So if I say this and I said dancing now, guys, look what's going to happen. You see, it changes back to it, which is good, right? So now, having done that, remember that if when I refresh, I lose my data. Okay, you may not see that now. So let me take out this. Let me take out this O. Make it empty array. So when I type in something now for a work by 2 p.m. So when I submit this, you see, but when I click refresh, I lose all the data. I lose all the data. I lose all the data. Sorry, guys, I'm not turning to something. Sorry about that, guys. So now it's empty, right? So what we want to do now is we want to be able to store our data in the local storage. So what we're going to do basically is we're going to say when this page loads, set some data into the local storage. So how are we going to do that? We're going to use effect also again, and we're going to call the function, and we're going to set a dependency, and the dependency will be our tasks array. And what do we want to do? We want to say go to our local storage, and dot we are setting, right, dot set item. We're setting our item, and we open this. What are we setting? We have to give it a name. What is the name of the item? It will be task. We're going to tell it tasks. And now, what item are we setting? We are setting the tasks, right? But now we can't just write it like this because we are passing it. We have to stringify it. We have to use JSON dot stringify, JSON dot stringify, and we're going to pass in a prop, which is going to be our task, right? Task. So this is good now. Okay, on the effect, use effect is not defined. So we're just going to import it straight away. So we should be good now. And then we are setting it. So you see that we're setting it like this. So now that we set it this way, we should be good. Okay, are we good? Are we good? Okay, cannot access task before you. Okay, that's another thing again. This is happening again, guys. So we cut it and you come here to display it. So we should be good now. So now we are storing the data in our local storage. So let's check it. Let's check it. So we go to application, we go to local storage, which is here, you see, empty. Now initially we have empty, right? So once I say going on a date by 3 p.m., once I submit it, you see now, guys, because it's depending on the tasks array. So that means whenever the tasks array changes, we get data from it. And you see, the ID decided to do it on a date at 3 p.m. So now we are storing it, but now we need to get it back because when I load this page, it goes away. We don't want that to happen, right? So what we need to do is we're going to set an initial stage. We're going to say const initial, let's just say initialize or let's say initial state. So we follow a good convention. What we want to do is I want to get this from local storage. Say local storage dot get now. So we are getting something. What are we getting? We're just getting the data in this with this name. But now we can't even access it because it has been stringified, right? So we need to pass it. So we cut this out. We say JSON dot pass, and we're passing that. That's all. No, now instead of having an empty array here, why not have initial state? So this This is going to come before that so that we can pass this in here. So when we save, we should be good. So now if I write seen a friend today, so if I submit it, we have data, right? And if I refresh my page, I should be able to have my data back. You see? Perfect, right? Everything is still there. So I'm not losing files. I'm not losing data. Maybe I save this and I want to get it. I'm coming back to my system tomorrow and I want to access, okay, the to-do list that I did yesterday, can I still have access to it? Yeah, you can. All you need to do is just refresh the page. You'll still have your data. Persistency, right? So guys, I hope this is able to teach us more or explain to us about what we know about context API. Um, Thank you guys for always showing up to watch my videos. I'm grateful for that. And I have more content to bring on this channel. As long as you like the button, as long as you push on the like button and you subscribe to my channel, please subscribe, guys. That way, this video gets to many people all around the world. But if I have little subscription or subscribers, I'm limited to little people. But when I have more subscribers, now I have more people to watch my video and to give content and comments and all that. So thank you guys for this video. This is my first time of doing video, making a video with me showing, and it's gonna be the first of its kind. And from here going forward, I think I'll stick to just having my face show so that we can relate. Someone is telling you how to do something, you can see the person's face and all that. So thank you guys for sticking around. Thank you for watching this video. I'm so grateful. Thank you for everything. Thank you for always showing up. Yeah, for now, it's gonna be bye for now from me. Thank you. Have a good one. Bye.